Okay, I begin the second series of my lectures. First, I must make some corrections because I regularly I am making mistake, and I have made lots of mistakes because English is not my native tongue. I'm Russian, and I don't have much conversation practice. So I said in the last lecture or lecture, species, which is plural, species should be said, is if you use singular. Then I said probably testosterone, but in English it's testosterone. Testosterone, which means male sex hormone. And when I said about this region, when I was discussing this region, I named its disposition as northeastern India, but it's northwestern India, of course. And another correction, which I forget, but I prepared much better for this sequel. And I said waterfalls in the region of Huakai, water wells, of course, because there is no running water in this region of the northwestern Kalahari. These sources of water are called either water holes or wells, or water wells. And around each well, Bushmen band, I say Bushmen instead of San, because San is in Khoisan language. In Nama language, it's robbers, so I prefer Bushmen. Although themselves, they call themselves Zhuk Huansi, which means good people. And they call the Bushmen outside this region Zhuk Udole, which is bad people. Although these people, sometimes they are called Kung. They have the same culture. But this region, I'll show you now, the drawing, which I made in my book. I made it from the book of Lorna Marshall, The Kung of 99. I pronounce it not quite correctly. This is a lateral click, and this is a other click, like popping of the bottle. Walk I. Okay, probably I'll say 99. And this is the region where a number of 25 Bushman bands with a medium size of 25 persons, relatives, are established around each well. Now I'll probably come for the stick. This is a plant which I would use as a stick indicator. So actually, I make musical instruments out of it. Pan flutes. I collect it in the wood and make pan flutes out of it. So at each water hole, a Bushman band is established. For instance, here in the southern region, the band is called Nok Gao. Nok Gao. In this language of Zhukwasi, there are 4 cliques. I wouldn't describe them in detail. And there is a man, Christopher Ehret, who speculates about that these cliques are the ancient phonemes of the proto-language. But I think it's absolutely wrong. I think they should correspond, but probably I'll touch upon this in the future lectures, upon the correspondences between some affricates of the languages which can be included in Nostratic languages. Here I must say a couple of words about Nostratic languages. This is a mega linguistic family established by Vladislav Markovich Ilyich Svyatych, a Soviet scholar in the 60s, which includes in itself 5 linguistic families: Indo-European, Uralic, Altaic, Dravidian, and Kartvelian. And actually, originally, Ilishvitish included in this into this mega family or super family Afrasian languages, but later Sergei Anatolyevich Starostin excluded this, I think quite correctly. And these Nostratic languages stem from the Nostratic proto-language, Nostratic proto-languages, which existed, I think, around 12,000 years ago. And they can be grouped together also with the languages Sino-Caucasian of the same, roughly of the same antiquity, and the Afrasian. And altogether they form a larger mega family, which we with one scholar, Andrei Vitalyevich Karatayev, proposed to call Eurasian. But probably at the same level of the cladistical deepness, together with these Eurasian languages can be grouped the so-called Khoisan languages of South Africa, which consists of at least two families of the Bushman languages, three actually, because the central Bushman languages can be clumped together with the Khoi languages, with the languages of the Khoi people, who were not originally hunter-gatherers but pastoralists. Anyway, I think that the culture of microlists, which is called Wilton and Smithfield, Wilton at least, came to Africa not so long ago, as the Bushmen split genetically, or Khoisan split genetically. These archaeological cultures came to South Africa, I think in maybe 10,000 years ago, but the Bushmen, according to some data, genetic data, split from the rest of the humankind 200,000 years ago. They are the most ancient cultural group or genetic group, but or populational group, but they have not the oldest language, because, as I said, these cliques should correspond to some affricates of the languages of which are close to these Eurasian languages. Okay, so and this is what I so-called couldn't name the area, the square kilometers. This is 100 to 100 kilometers in the region of the 21st grade of the western latitude and 20th grade of the southern longitude. I'm sorry, longitude, and this is latitude, the 20th grade of south latitude in the middle. And here two groups. These Bushmen were discovered by the expedition, so-called Lorna Marshall expedition, and she described in her book The Kung of Nai in the life of these Bushmen in the 50s of the previous century. And they worked in the here in the band called Gausha. Actually, there are two bands at one waterhole, and the famous film about the Bushmen, Gods Must Have Been Crazy, or Must Have Gone Crazy, was screened. The major role was played by a school teacher from this settlement, which is called Tsunkwe. This is a regional center of all this region. And actually, the conflicts which I discussed in the previous lecture happened between the people of Gausha and Tsunkwe. So the Lord Marshal haven't supported no ethnographic details upon the Bushmen upon the Huasi from Sunque. And the data was given by Richard Lee, who worked much later, because as I said, this language, well, this region was discovered by amateur expedition of Lorna Marshall, of Marshall's family. And the book was written by Lorna Marshall, the thickest book, some people. Elizabeth Marshall Thomas also wrote books. And Richard Lee worked later in the Doba area here. This is the roughly border between Botswana and Namibia. And now I come to the data, because last time I couldn't find the name of an author who gave data on the homicide among the Australian Aboriginals of the well-watered regions of Australia. And I tried to find it in this book, in my book, actually. And I couldn't find it because I thought that the surname of this author begins with F letter, but it begins with B letter. So it's Blaney. And Blaney, in his book, G. Blaney, I don't know, maybe Joseph, I don't know. The book of the 1975, it's called Triumph of the Nomads, A History of Ancient Australia. And there he supported the numerical data which could be compared with the data from the Nai region. For the sake of simplicity, because when I pronounce I, you know, the Bushmen, all the same, they pronounce it simultaneously. For the white man, it's almost impossible to pronounce these clicks correctly. There are 4 different types, but I tend to use, instead of 4 types, just one, etc. So the level of homicide was 7 times higher in Australia. And this was, I think that I was the first social anthropologist who drew attention to the colleagues to this fact, that the levels of homicide among the nomadic hunter-gatherers may very much differ. And I was interested in the reason why. Now I'll go to the data upon homicide among the Nai Zuhuasi, according to the data of Richard Lee, which I must find. I must find plan of the lecture 38. Where, on which page? It's written in my book. In my book. On the page 48. I am prepared now. 48. Okay. So this is the data. 13 murders for a group of 730 people for 25 years. As I said, most of these murders occurred as a feud between the members of the Gausha and Tsungkwe bands. And so, these figures are 10 times lower than in Australia. And in Australia, there is a book of William Buckley, the runaway convict, who was amazed at the level of the inter-community conflicts and murders in the region of the southeastern Australia. But the level is similar in the northern Australia too, but it's obviously it's lower in the central Australia in the same regions. Ecologically, they are semi-desert regions like the Kalahari Desert. Actually, this Kalahari Desert doesn't have running water, only water wells. But it's not desert. It's the vegetation is like in savanna. And here, some features of these landscape are shown. These are dry river courses, which are called in one of the local languages, Omuramba, and these are the growth of the mongongo nut. This is another Omuramba, and these are the only hills in the region. They are called Aha Hills or Tsorila Hills. They are not very high. Actually, I want to write a song of this scientific of the science fiction fashion, employing this landscape. And also I mentioned Jens Bjerre, whose book on this region I read first. He wrote a Danish traveler who wrote a book, The Lost World of the Kalahari, and he worked here in Samangai region. And all these bushmen, as I said, about 700 of them, they form what is called in biology dam, because they make marriages within this group and regard themselves as friendly people, good people. Whereas outside this region, 100 to 100 kilometers, the other bushmen of the same culture, they are treated like enemies, actually. But they are very rarely meet each other. Normally, the people tend to find the marriage partners within these bands. And so, what is the ecological reason for so low scale by hunter-gatherer standards of the homicide? As I said, it's the erratic rains which come from here, I think in autumn, maybe in November, but I may be mistaken. Remember, this is a southern hemisphere, and they are very erratic. If the rain doesn't fall here, this year this band would die if it were surrounded by the hostile bands. So they consider the Bushmen that this is a sacred duty of the well-watered band to give refuge in times of drought for their unlucky neighbors. And the ethnographers were stricken by the constant worries about these people, about the aggression. They have the proverb, fighting is very dangerous. I am citing Lord Marshall from the Lord Marshall book. Someone might get killed. And actually it's indeed so, because when tempers level high rise up, the people in the locality are starting to hide behind trunks and the trees, because the angry people may shoot at each other with the deadly poisoned arrows, because the manner of the manhunt here is to hunt with the small bows and poisoned arrows. And there are lots of animals which come here to this region, because in the middle there are lots of so-called pans, the depressions which are liked by the game, by the antelopes. So this is, and by the way, in the middle of the 19th century, the expedition of the Thomas Bynes, they wanted to come to this region. They heard about it. There are lots of bushmen here, and they came from the direction of the Lake Ngami. And I calculated they didn't get to this region only by 15 kilometers. So they didn't leave us, haven't left us with the first discussion, description of these groups of people. So this is what I wrote about these Bushmen in my book. And I also found that the morphological similarity between these Bushmen and the Mongoloids is caused by the convergent pedomorphic adaptation to the semi-arid conditions. And semi-arid conditions were even harsher in the region where the Mongoloids formed in the Central Asia during the last glacial maximum. And so these features, they were first proposed by Ludwig Bolk in the beginning of the 20th century. No, it's not bad. I wrote them out in this notebook on page 18. So I don't have to look it for in my book. What are these? Orthography of the face. And this is, I can demonstrate very easily by my drawing from the book of Stephen J. Gould, Neoteny and Ontogeny, yeah. Stephen J. Gould, famous book. And this is the baby chimpanzee with the orthognatic face. And this is the adult chimpanzee with the prognatic face. And so this sort of human-like profile. And we are built in with the tendency to pedomorphic adaptation of this kind. All the hominins starting from probably Australopithecines, or at least Homo erectus. And so what I was my problem in the previous lecture was that I forgot the word isomorphic growth, and I tried to use to describe pedomorphism the term allomorphic growth, because in women during the pubertic period the growth is continuous isomorphically. So all parts of the skeleton of the head grow with the same speed. But in men, due to the factor of testosterone, this is growth. The jaws growth, the chin, not the chin, but the jaws, the mandibular grows faster than all the rest, which makes males ugly, because in their morphology they are intermediate between women of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. And some of them are more like chimpanzees, some less. I am. Okay, I would not comment on it. So this process must be called not feminization of the facial skeleton, but pedomorphization, because the high standard was given by Stephen J. Gould, famous man. And so I continue about these features, which were first proposed by Ludwig Bolk and cited by several authors, including Stephen J. Gould. This is orthognathia of the face, reduction or lack of the hair growth on the body, epicanthic fold, which is a mongoloid fold in the eye, high weight of the brain, relative weight, long unfinished ungrowth of the skull sutters, labia majora among women, structure of the wrists and feet. So they are small, like in women. Especially all these features are expressed not just in Homo sapiens, but in women, in Bushmen, and in Mongoloids. And so you know that the Chinese woman even artificially tried to make feet as small as possible by binding them, by actually mutilating them. So the form of the pelvis, but I don't know very much about it. So altogether 12 features. Out of these 12 features, which are pedomorphic, this is a pedomorphic list, 9 unite Mongoloids and Bushmen. So the conclusion is that the reason for their similarity is the convergent pedomorphic adaptation during the periods of arid conditions in the regions where they evolved. And so what is the major factor which ultimately brings these the development of these features? This is testosterone, and which is was described in detail in the book of Sasumu Ono, who in his book, all his life he studied the action of testosterone, and he concluded that in all mammals the specifically male features are controlled by testosterone ultimately, because there are genetic factors, multiple genetic factors which control in their turn testosterone. And this is true not only for instance, Homo sapiens with their beards and mustaches, but for the lions and similar mammals. And so I have discovered that the humanity can be divided in 3 groups by level of testosterone in the blood serum. The highest levels are among Negroids. Generally, I wouldn't dwell upon the validity of the term race. Instead of saying race, a short word, discredited to some extent, we could use the long word morpho-populational type, for instance, which is inconvenient. But actually, in this context, I would use term the big races on the basis of the morphological difference, not genetic. An intermediate level of testosterone is found among the Europeoids, or Caucasian race, and the lowest level is among the Mongoloids and the Bushmen, which is and the results were for instance, for the Afro-Americans of the United States were received independently by studying the frequency of the prostate cancer about them. By the way, there was a man, scholar, Philip Rushton, who other people called racist, but he himself denied it. He was a racist. And I had a book of him. Actually, I respect this man, and he had a public lecture dispute with David Suzuki, a very liberal guy from Canada, and this Philip Rushton enumerated 8 features, 8 characters, which distribute between these 3 big races the same as testosterone. But he didn't mention testosterone, and said that these characters can be increased from 8 to 60 to 60 to 60. I remember, for instance, the first, it is the level of the twin births, the rate of the physical growth, and unfortunately the IQ index. And Philip Rushton frequently said that this is the measuring of intellect, but which is not. IQ measures intelligence quotient, I think, only one aspect of the intelligence. By the way, I have a low this index, but nobody ever called me a stupid in my life, because I wouldn't explain why, but that's the fact. And so I think that all these characters that were described as having tripartite division among the population of the world were primarily controlled by testosterone levels. And this is a big question: what controls the levels of testosterone? Not just at puberty, but in the development of the fetus, for instance, or maybe even at earlier development periods. Now, I go to the other, from my book, I go to the themes that were developed by two very ingenious authors, at least. One of them is not easy to pronounce. His surname is from Belgium, and one of the women, Patricia Caicedo, in the introduction to the public lecture, called him Bosks, which is incorrect. His surname should be pronounced Books, Cedric Books, from Belgium, because this combination of letters is read in Flamand language, as U, and his U in Dutch and Flamand languages, and his name is written Cedric Books. Cedric Books. He's a linguist, but actually, together with his colleague, at least one, I haven't read yet. I read only abstract of their paper of the 2014, and his colleague is called Antonio Benitez Burraco. Much easier to pronounce than Books. And they published in the Frontiers of Psychology on April 2016 an article which is named oh God, that's another stun of mine. Okay, I'll just name this article, a similar article, possible functional links among brain and skull related genes selected in modern humans, Frontiers of Psychology, or something like that. But I began to write down the abstract, the most important points of the abstract of this article, and I just cited I just read it, what I wrote out. By the way, this is the second article. The shape of the human language, ready brain. The ready brain. Okay. Frontiers of psychology. But now I begin to say, our core, books and Benitez, Buraco, right. Our core hypothesis is that the emergence of our species' specific language, ready brain, ought to be understood in light of the developmental changes expressed at the level of brain morphology and neural connectivity that occurred in our species after the split from Neanderthals Denisovans, and that gave us more globular brain case. Remember the globularity of the brain case. Where is the globule? More globular brain case, like a child chimpanzee. Configuration. In addition to changes at the cortical level, we hypothesize that the anatomical shift that led to globularity also entailed significant changes at the subcortical level. Here we focus on the thalamus, which we argue is central to language and human cognition, as it modulates frontoparietal activity. We construct a candidate gene set whose members are involved in the development and connectivity in the evolution of the human head, and are known to give rise to language-associated disorders. Okay, these are these genes. I wouldn't name all these genes, but one can read them in the internet. About, I don't know, many. I think finally they may be connected with the testosterone. And where happened this shift, as I proposed? In the same place, in the same semi-arid place where we acquired our chin, which is a byproduct of this process, of the self-domestication, of the lowering of the level of testosterone, either here or here. I mean, probably in the upper part of the Persian Gulf, from which the haplogroups IG went further to the Levant, where the language was invented, but somewhere here within the haplogroup F, all that is globularity, all these genetic changes occurred around 50 kiloyears ago. This is all for which I have time to talk about, but maybe next time I'll bring my book on linguistics, which which is not unpublished, but I have a copy of it. I can print it. Thank you very much.